And the reason that that's important is because COPO cars did not have the engine designation on the fender. They were kind of like a sleeper car. They only got the blue bow ties on the front and on the back. Today on Backyard Barn Finds, we're going to possibly take a look at one of the rarest 69 Camaros that we've ever had the chance to take a look at on this channel. And supposedly it's in this giant chicken coop here behind us. The owner, Jay, has invited us all the way up here to Maine to check out this car and possibly decode it for you guys live here on the camera. Jay, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, Jay. I'm doing well.
Good.
I guess if you could lead the way here,
Okay.
we'll see exactly what you have to offer.
We'll see what it is.
And Jay, while we're walking to this car, can you explain to me and to maybe the audience at home what exactly is the story behind this car? This maybe was your high school car, is that correct?
Yes, I bought this car in the week I graduated high school.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
So it's been in the family for a long time.
Yes, been here in my family for a long time. Yes.
When exactly did you graduate high school?
1980.
1980. Holy
Yes.
cow.
Yep.
Okay. Now, is this a car that you drove for a pretty long time, or how long did you drive the car, or?
I drove it for like 5 years.
For 5 years? Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
And did it have the big block 427 in the car whenever you drove it in high school?
It did not.
It did not.
I had a 402 in the car when I drove it.
Oh, so it still was a big block, but it wasn't the 427.
Yes.
Okay. This is not the car right here. This is another Camaro that you own.
Yes.
This is also a 69. And this is just an X11 base car is what you've told me.
Yes, it is.
And the car that we're going to take a look at is the car behind it over here.
Yes.
Yeah, show us exactly what we have here, Jay.
Okay.
So there's no fenders on this car. There's no engine to this car. There's no transmission to this car.
Nope.
Do you have the original engine?
I don't have the original engine for this car.
Okay. Transmission?
No, I do not have that either.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, what I'm going to do here is try and start from, well, why don't we start in the back? I see, I was going to say the front, but I see the radiator sitting on the floor over here. And COPO Camaros, they only made 1,015 of these cars, and they had a big block L72 427 down inside. This car supposedly is not a double COPO, meaning it only has the 9561 427 option. Yenko basically would be a double COPO, and so it would have a few different options on it, like a sports car conversion, like the sway bar and the speedometer. This is just the base COPO. Still a very, very rare car. But first I want to start with this radiator. Now, obviously this would have a 4-core radiator in it, and just by the way the weight and by the way that it looks, we know that it is a 4-core. You can see how thick the top here is. And it does have the curved neck. So this is a big block radiator, obviously. We can see how thick it is here. It's a 4-core, and then it does have the curved neck that would be required on a COPO car. So this is a good piece. No numbers on here, no tag on here to denote that it is a COPO piece, but it is leading us in the right direction. You also said that you had the gas tank here, and we'll try and take a look at the fuel line on the car and see if it goes the whole way back. But I'm already noticing that it does have the 3/8 fuel line for the big block car that would be correct on an X11 COPO vehicle. Now, if we turn around, we'll go ahead and actually start taking a look at what we have here for the car. And we see that it does have the spoiler on here. And you were telling me that you haven't really been able to get the trunk open.
No,
I see the key
it
here.
seems to be stuck shut.
It does have a key here. However, we have tried to get it open. Not a huge deal. The car is extremely rough. This car did sit outside underneath a pine tree. You can see that in between the trunk lid here, we can see all of the pine needles. So possibly this car's trunk has, we could say, just seized or just kind of stuck.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a question though, Jay. Do you believe that this spoiler was on this car before you got it, or did it not have a spoiler when you got it?
It had a spoiler on it when I bought it.
Okay, so it did have a spoiler when you got it.
When I got it, yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, there's not much a whole lot we can tell from the rear tail panel, but what I want to do is take a look at the doubler plate to see if it originally had dual exhaust, and we'll go ahead and see if we can Get the flashlight out here. Now, if we take a peek underneath the car, obviously we see that it does have dual exhaust, one here, one there. We see that it's been sitting here since 1985 on the last registration on that license plate. Question for you, Jay. Do you have a title to this car, or is it just a registration?
Just a registration for this
And
car.
that's the way that they do it up here in Maine,
Yes,
right?
we only have a registration. So many years old, you don't have to have a title.
Gotcha.
And I never had a title for
So you
it.
would just take that registration to your local DMV and basically get a title for it.
Yep.
If I could ask my camera guy to come the whole way over to this side of the car. COPO's had dual exhaust from the factory, and there should be a plate. Oh, it's a little tight back here. And yes, you can see the plate on the frame rail. It's right here, and that would be the hanger for the dual exhaust. Now, you could get dual exhaust on any 69 Camaro. It was an option, but for the COPO cars, it was required, and it's good to see that on this car. What I also want to show you guys is I did receive some photos of this car to take a look at before we got here. And one thing that I did notice on the car was it has a hockey stripe here. Now, the tag for this car says it was a red car, which it is red, but Jay, you had mentioned that you had painted this hockey stripe on here. Is that correct?
Yes.
So that was not there when you originally got the car?
No, it wasn't.
And the reason that that's important is because COPO cars did not have the engine designation on the fender. They were kind of like a sleeper car. They only got the blue bow ties on the front and on the back. And you can see that this fender has no holes for there's no Z28 emblem here. There's no 350 or 396 letters here or anything like that. But what I also want to show you is, and yes, if we look down inside this fender, there are no punch holes here for the call out for the engine designation. And you believe this to be an original fender to the car?
I believe that's the original fender to the car.
And the other fenders you had mentioned to me were in the car, but they were NOS fenders?
Yes.
Cool. And we'll take a look at those here in just a second. Underneath the fender here, we do have a cowl hood. You can see the cowl pieces here, which is good. However, I want to just check and see that it's not an aftermarket piece. And the way we can do that is by this little notch right here. So if you guys have a reproduction cowl hood at home, it would have like a 45-degree angle here. They're just made a little bit different than the originals from Chevrolet. We walk back the car here. We can see that there is a fender inside this car. There's actually two fenders inside this car. This one does have a NOS fender in here. I can feel the sticker. Don't know if you're gonna be able to pick it up on camera, but that is a good piece to have to restore this car. Those fenders are pretty expensive. Now, one thing, Jay, you told me is you said, Parker, this car is rough.
Mm-hmm. It is.
So what's the story on this car? What did you do with it after 1985? Where'd you put it? Or can you tell us a little bit about the history that you might know of? Or
Well, I parked the car outside for a few years, several years, and then that's why the underneath is probably so rough. And then when I built a shed for it, put it in a shed.
Okay.
And a few years ago, probably 3.5 years ago, I sold my home, and then that's where I moved it back into here.
Moved it back into here.
Yep.
And does it have any floors in it at all?
Is floors, but not much.
Oh yeah, we got a Fred Flintstone job here.
Yep.
You can see down here how rough the floors are. And that's not a huge deal. They make the floors for this car. They make the one piece that goes the whole way back. The rockers are kind of what I was concerned about. And it actually, if you run your hand underneath the rocker down here, there's no chunks. There's no holes coming out of the rocker, which is a good sign. That's kind of like the structure of the car, as well as if we run our hand underneath the door here, the doors on this car don't seem to be that bad. Not really anything you can tell by a COPO from the inside. However, if it was one of those double COPOs like the Yankos were, it would have a 140 mile an hour speedometer. Jay, do we know what speedometer is in this car?
I can't remember.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead around here and just check. while we're working our way to the front. This car does have a 120 mile an hour speedometer, which would be correct for what I was explaining earlier. And it does look like that it has a tach in here, and it does have a center console gauges, and this car would have been a 4-speed as well. And if you can take a look at the whole way back here, where I'm lighting up with the light, I do see an X. I can't necessarily make out the 1, but I do see an X, and that would confirm that it is an X11 car. It also looks like it does have a different style later Camaro steering wheel on this car. But the majority of the people that are watching this video that are familiar with COPO Camaros, they're going to want to take a look at the front of this car, and for several reasons, we'll go over that right now. So COPO cars were kind of like sleepers. They were put into a lower base model car. A big engine was put into a lower base model car, and that's denoted on the cow tag here as an X11. So you can see here it says X11, which a lot of people have Camaros that say X11. However, they don't have one of these. And this is a big block heater box that is on this car. And the reason that it is kind of loose here is because I wanted to see if the VIN that's behind here matches the VIN that's on the dash. Now, when you sent me pictures of this car, you had asked if it was a real COPO or not. All of the COPO VINs are known. In other words, there is a registry that all of the numbers for COPOs, all 1,015 of them, are all in one place, and you can look that up online. If we take a look at the VIN number for this car, which I'm not sure we're going to be able to, let me see if we can get this glass out of here. We'll just kind of move it. Yeah, so if we take a look at the VIN number that's over here, we don't have to necessarily show that one on camera, but that number should match in 2 other locations. And we've already gone ahead and kind of filed down some paint here to see if we can match that up with one of the second locations. And it is extremely corroded, but it is there, and it does match the one that is on the dash. You do have to squint, but it does have the same numbers. Now, Jay, what I'm going to ask you to do is see if you can take this big block heater box off of here. Now, remember, if it was small block, the hoses would come out right here. This has the big block box on it. Doesn't look like it's ever really been messed with. It is a garnet red car from the cow tag here. And we can see that in the actual silicone here, we can see the original garnet red right underneath. More importantly, though, we were able to rub away some of the grime here and reveal the VIN on the heater box of this car. Now, this VIN is upside down, and it does match the one that is over here. So that tells me that basically this car has never really been apart. Now, I do know that it has quarters on it. You had mentioned that it did have quarters put on it at one point, and it does have a different fender that was in there. But so far, we have original fender to the car. We have an original numbers matching car as far as the numbers on the firewall match the one over here on the VIN. Do we know if this has been replaced, the front clip?
I don't know if it has been replaced. No.
Okay, we'll go ahead and
set this up here.
Set that up there. Well, this fuel line does look correct. It does look like it does appear to be the correct 3/8 fuel line for the COPO cars for an X11. But the reason I was asking that is because it has some white paint over here, and I just wasn't sure. Maybe did you paint it back in the day, or was it like that when you got it?
It could have been like that when I got it. It's hard to remember that far back, I guess. But
okay,
no, I don't think I painted it.
Totally understand that.
Yeah.
Now, we do have the right fan shroud support right here. Now, remember when I said you could have a double COPO like the Yenkos were, the sports car conversion? Those would have a 1-inch thick sway bar up front up here, but however, this car is not a double COPO, it's just a single COPO. We have the small sway bars, so it's good to see that that has not been changed. And they all had disc brakes on the front. And you can see here, this one does have the correct disc brake booster. Everything here does look and appear to be correct for the car. And we do know that it has the Z bar here for the 4-speed. One thing I'm noticing while I'm kind of standing in the subframe of this car is that the motor mounts on this car are not correct. And you said that at one point that it was replaced with a small block or something?
When I purchased the car, it had a small block
It had a small block in it.
Yes.
Now, if this was a big block motor mounts, they would actually be different. It would kind of be offset. The engine was offset 1 inch to the passenger side. And that leads us to the big block cross member that's down here. And there's really no way to show on camera how I know that's a big block cross member other than the offset. But if I was to reach my hand up underneath here, it's a giant hole, like a square hole, instead of a smaller circle or a smaller oval shape for the small block cars. Now, you had mentioned that this is not the original power steering setup for this car.
It is not.
It is not. And we kind of have a gentleman who remembers this car from 1976. And you were able to speak with him, and I was actually able to speak with him, and he said that he actually took the power steering pump off of this car originally. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Now, do you know if that would come with the car? Do you think he'd release that too? Or?
I don't know.
Not sure. We'd have to talk to him about that.
You'd have to talk to him about that.
He's a good guy. He's a good guy.
He is,
So yeah, and he's the one who actually kind of invited us up here to kind of make all of this happen. But what I wanted to go over is the stuff that's on that side of this car. And Mike, if we can kind of move this glass a little bit. I don't want to break it. Or is it already broken, or? I don't know if it's cracked or not. What I wanted to do is just talk about this tag here for just a moment. So this is a cow tag, of course, and they're made out of a different metal, of course, aluminum compared to the steel, so that's why it's not rusty. So of course it says 69 for 1969, and then we have our 1243, which means that it is a V8 car. We have 5252, which would be a garnet red lower and a garnet red upper, so that didn't have a vinyl top or anything like that. We have 711, and that means that it just had the standard base black interior. Now, what I'm trying to do is basically take this number right here, the VIN, and see if this number matches this tag. This number basically tells us, if you look this up with records that are online, that the car was built sometime around the second to last week or maybe the last week in May. If we look here, we see on the cow tag that the cow tag for the car is a 06A, which would be the first week in June. Now, they did have some sort of a strike or some sort of snafu where the cars that were built at the end of May, when they went back to production, were produced with a 6A tag. So for those at home that are not able to follow along with that, what that means for me is that this number on the dash and this number on the tag, they're cohesive. They're correct. In other words, this doesn't say that this is built in August or October, and then this says that this was built in May or March. So them being correct is a good sign for this being a COPO car. While we're over here, these cars came with a cow hood. We had mentioned that earlier. The cow hood's sitting right here. We do have the hole right here for the ZL2 cow induction hood. Now, of course, if it was a RS, this hole right here would also be punched, and this is not. But this hole right here does confirm that this car did come with a cow hood. So, what does that mean? That means we have an X11 car with a big block heater box with a cow induction hood hole, with the components correct still from the factory coming through the hole. What that tells me is that so far everything is matching up for this to be a COPO Camaro. We do have one thing, however, that I would like to check, and That is the rear end in this car. The rear ends in COPO Camaros were 410 rear ends, and they were all BE coded, which would be a BE code on the rear end. And we'll try and see if this one has the stamping still in place. Do you happen to have a jack?
Yes. We'll get jack
That
for
we
you.
can use, Jay?
Yep.
Yep, right there. Now, while he's doing that, these cars would have had 14 by 7 inch wheels, rally style wheels. However, this car does not have those wheels on it. If it was a double COPO, of course, they would be YH 15-inch wheels, but the single COPO's got the XTs. These say TX on them, but they don't say XTs, so they are not correct to this car. And that's something that you would have to find if you wanted to restore it back to original COPO condition. You can see the exhaust on this side, and of course the fuel line there. What I want to take a look at, however, is the leaf springs on this car. All COPOs had 5 leaf springs. Remember, Z28s had 4, and the COPOs had 5. And if we take a look and count these leaf springs, we do see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so that's a good sign here. We also can take a look at the rear tube for, if my camera guy wants to go back down where he was at, see if we can make this possible. We were able to kind of brush some of the rust off of the rear end. And you can see here that we have a BS, which would not be correct for a COPO. Now, the gentleman that has known this car since 1976 had told us that they pretty much raced this car, beat this car up here, up in Maine. But we see how it says 07 right here next to the BS, and that means that this was produced in July. And then it has the day after that. I can't read the number all the way over there right now. So we know that this rear end was built after this car was actually produced, and BS would be a 331 posi track rear end. Still a great rear end for a Camaro, however, not a correct rear end for a COPO Camaro. And that is a pretty big hit, because to replace this rear end is about $10,000 for a BE coated rear end. So not a huge deal, but not something that pushes us in the right direction. These cars were, basically race cars is, I guess, the way you would, they're not necessarily race cars, but they were custom ordered cars, and the original engine to this car is not available. It was blown up, you think? Or,
Yes,
or what do you?
I believe so. It was blown up before I got it.
Oh, before you got it. Okay,
Yes.
and that's why I had the small block in it.
Yes.
Awesome. So not like a giant deal breaker for this car. Remember, it does have the VIN that is a known COPO in the VIN. The numbers on the front match. They're very rough, but that is something that if you were to restore this car, you are going to have to spend the money to go out and replace. People would expect that to be there for a COPO car. You did say that you had a couple blocks with this car, or maybe a transmission, maybe not a transmission, or
I have some transmissions, but I don't think they are the original transmission.
you don't think they're correct for this car?
For this car? They're
So
Muncies, but
Oh, they are Muncies.
yes.
Okay. Well, we can go take a look at them. I do know the number in my head that's on the front here. That would be on the original transmission. So we'll be able to find that out. What is your plan with this car? Would you like to sell it, or
I think I'd like to sell the car and see if somebody could restore the car.
restore the car?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's a car that's definitely worthy of restoration. However, it is extremely rough.
Yeah.
I would say, to be honest with the people at home, that if you were to purchase this car, you would probably have to replace all of the sheet metal on it. Would that be a fair assessment on your part as well?
That'd be a very fair assessment, yeah.
Okay. Would it be possible for you to show us those other engines to this car? Does any of those engines go with this car? Would you be selling that with?
I would sell them with the car, yes.
And is there multiple, just one or two?
I have, one full dressed 427, then an engine block.
Okay.
I think it's the right date code for this car.
Okay, is it just a short block?
Just the block.
Just the block, okay.
Yep.
Cool. As far as what's inside the car goes, I don't think there's really, there's one thing left that we do have to check, and that was whether this car had spoilers or not to it. And we'll okay, so I'm not feeling any pinhole here for the bracket for the front spoiler. And since we're not able to get the trunk open, it's just bare underneath over there. I'm not able to get the trunk open, but we were able to kind of peer back in there to the rear, basically the bars that give the tension for the spoiler. To me, they look like they're both small. So what I'm trying to say with that is that basically I do not believe that the spoiler was original to this car. I believe the front end is original to this car, the front clip, but I believe that it did not have spoilers on it. There's no hole back there, and the rods are the same size. I have not been able to crawl back in there and actually feel them, but to the eye, they look the same. And for the people that aren't sure exactly what I'm talking about, do you mind if we open the trunk to this one?
Sure.
Because this spoiler was added as well.
Yep.
And this car originally was a butternut yellow car that was painted blue. But do you see these two bars right here? On a real spoiler car, this one up here would be thicker than this one down here. And when I look through the back of the car, the red car over here, they both look like this. They both look like the same color. So I don't believe that it had a spoiler on the car originally. Other than that, the car has traction bars on it. It's had a mirror added over here to it. And it looks like it just had fixes that were done over time. In other words, all of the water that ran down in the cow looks like you guys fixed this piece right in here. Was this you maybe, or was this someone else?
Could have been someone else.
Could have been someone else. Okay. And that's basically when the water, when it rains, the water goes down in here and then comes out a little pinhole down here. But normally these front pieces rust out. On the registry, it does have this car listed as a car from Canada. However, I've actually reached out to GM of Canada, and they have confirmed that this car was not originally sold in Canada. On the registry also, it says that this car for this VIN would have been blue. However, this car has no signs of blue on it, except for the one piece of blue that's over here for the door hinge. There's one piece of blue that's right here for the door hinge. And you had mentioned, Jay, that you had actually replaced that yourself. So that was not there when you had bought the car.
Right. I replaced that one hinge for you.
I cannot find any other blue remnants on this car, so I do not ever believe that this car was blue. However, I do believe that this car is a 69 COPO Camaro from all the components that we've gone over and took a look at. Jay, do you have any other things that we maybe should look at on the car? Any things that we haven't looked at that maybe you know about or anything like that? Or
I think you've answered most of my questions.
Cool.
All of my questions, I think. I'm
cool.
just
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying my best. I just this car is really rough.
Yep.
Really rough, but to me, it's something that you would want to restore.
Yes, I would like to see it restored.
And being a red car, red is not a color that a lot of COPOs were painted. In other words, there's 1,015 of them in 69. I counted all of the red ones that were listed in the registry, and sometimes the registry can have colors wrong. Obviously, this one's not blue. But I think I counted like maybe 16 to 19 of them, if I'm remembering correctly. So basically less than 20 out of the 1,000 were red, and this one does have a black interior. One of the cooler combinations, in my opinion, being a red car. But it also has this hole right here, which is called a Muncie hole for the Muncie 4-speed transmission. And this is the speedometer cable that you see popping out right there, which would be correct for a COPO as well, if it was a 4-speed car, because you could have an automatic in a COPO. What do you guys think at home? Other Camaro guys out there that are watching this video, I would love to hear what you guys think about this car in the comments below. We've tried to cover everything that you could possibly cover to make this a COPO or make it not a COPO in this video. And I just would love to basically have a conversation in the comments debating that down below. It does have a known VIN as a COPO. You can look that up on the registry if you're watching this video. Jay, I think what we should do is go over and take a look at that engine, because you said it was a warranty replacement block, right?
Yes, I believe that's what it is.
And I don't think we've had one of those on the channels yet. So why don't we just head over there right now? Oh, wow. Can I go ahead?
Yep.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Now, is it the engine on the back there, or is it this one right
engine
here?
Right here in front is the engine that...
This one right here?
Yep. Should be the correct date code to...
Yep, it says 427 right there. Now, what we should be looking for, you said this was a warranty replacement block, right?
Yes.
Or a counter exchange, meaning that it has a CE or counter exchange on the pad, and yeah, right here. So, yeah, and it does say that, CE. Now, what we have to find out is what is the actual date of this engine. Now, you said you got this with that car?
I bought it years after I bought that car because I was going to restore the car at one time.
Okay, so you bought this afterwards then, so it
Yes.
didn't come with the car. However, in the car community, a lot of COPO engines were blown up. Same with 302 DZ engines, and of course you would go to your dealership and get a counter exchange block. The COPOs would have had a 512 big block, and
you want me to give you a hand?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Jay, we got to flip this over, and I'm not sure exactly the best way to do it. So
let's roll it this way.
Okay.
And come to you.
Gotcha.
There we go.
There we go. So this number right here is the block number, and the correct number, of course, would be 512. However, over here is the date code, and I can tell it is a 69 block because of the last letter right, or the last number right there says 9. And we do have a K4. So if we do the math, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, that's 11. So this is a November block in 1969, and it has a 4, so it's a November. It was made on November 4th, 1969. Is that date coded correct? Well, if your car was purchased in June, and the guy took it to the strip, blew it up, got a summer out of that engine, and went and got a counter exchange block, this would be date coded correct for the same year. Was it built before the car was built? No, but it is a block from 1969 where it's possible that he could have taken the original engine and got a counter exchange. Now we know that's not what happened because you bought this motor afterwards.
Yes.
But in the Camaro community, this would be an acceptable block for that car. Probably the second best block that you could possibly have. So, in my opinion, this going with the car is a big deal. It is a big deal. Do you have any other parts in here that came with the car?
There's other parts in here. There's transmissions and I have another 427 back there in the corner too that would go with the car.
Okay, and it's that one.
Yep.
And we know that one's not. You were saying it's not correct for the car, but it does go with the car.
Yes.
And this is looks like a 821 number. I'm not sure off the top of my head what that is. And do you know if the engines, or not the engines, the transmissions that you have, if they're correct for the car?
I have a few transmissions. I don't know if any of them are correct to the car. I would have to check that out. Yep, they're Muncie transmissions. Yep.
Awesome. Well, I know we're not able to dig back through that here on this video, but you will probably get me some pictures or something maybe of that later on if someone's interested.
I will.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Well, I wanna take the time and just say thank you for letting me check out the car, Jay. It's something that I've wanted to check off my bucket list for a long time.
Yeah.
I've owned many 69 Camaros. However, I've never been able to check out a car that was a COPO. And I just want to thank you for that. And
thank you for coming to look at it.
Yeah, we made the trip up here specifically for this car, and it's definitely made my day.
Yeah.
So if you guys found any value in this video, go ahead and give us a like or subscribe on the channel. and have a great day.